Alright, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Chris Parker's Album Club. Now, if you've been following us a while, you already know how this works. Today with me I have Ben,
Hello.
Matthew,
Benny and the Jets.
and Santiago.
Run for your life.
Alright, and on that note, I'm gonna run for my life. Ah! Anyways, I suppose we better hop right into it. I'm going to announce what the albums are, and then we'll give our initial impressions on the albums before listening to them. Alright, you all ready?
Yes.
Alright, the albums are Shake Your Money Maker by the Black Crowes and Ride the Lightning by Metallica.
Ooh.
So now we're going to be going through each person, and we've already gotten kind of a reaction from Matthew, of course, but we're going to be going through each person, asking them for their initial impressions of these albums, and we are going to start, as usual, with you, Ben. Ben, what are your initial impressions on these albums?
I think that I don't know what the first album is. I am vaguely familiar with the second album, but I can't really say that I listen to it. It's just like an old Metallica album. I have heard Master Puppets, which is the next album, so I mean, I don't know. I don't know that album though, and I don't know "Shake Your Money Maker" by the Black Crowes at all, as far as I know.
Alright, Matthew, we're going to move on to you. What are your thoughts on these albums?
I I would say as not as much as a certain person. Shout out to you, Zach. I am a fan of Metallica. More of a fan of their '80s work, which is like Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Justice is for All. This is my second favorite Metallica album. Um, as for the Black Crowes, I've never heard "Shake Your Moneymaker," so that's going to be interesting.
Alright, Santiago, what are your initial thoughts on these albums?
Well, I know Metallica, of course, but I don't know Black Crowes. So I haven't heard any album from them, either Metallica, Black Crowes. I don't know anything on them, basically. Well, especially Black Crowes, it's the first time. I'm going blind
Alright,
or if I will like it or not.
yeah. Alright, so as for me, I did hear fairly recently listen to this Metallica album while I was listening to just kind of some random stuff while walking. But I'm not still super familiar with it. I've heard it like a grand total of once, and it hasn't really sunk in. In fact, it was already on a list at that point when I listened to it. So, um, but I wouldn't say I'm super familiar with it. As for Shake Your Money Maker, I've never listened to it. I'm kind of only vaguely familiar with the Black Crows as like a thing. Like, I think I know like one song by them, and that's about it. Um, so yeah, I'm going into this not completely blind. I mean, as I said, I have listened to Wide the Lightning, and I at least seem to be the most familiar with the Black Crows of anyone here. But um, I don't know. I'm going to say neither one of these albums is particularly my style of music. I don't know in the end which one I'm going to say I like better. I mean, obviously, I'm somewhat disposed towards Ride the Lightning just because I've heard it once before, albeit pretty recently. It hasn't really sunk in, but still, I really don't know which one of these is going to come out on top. So, alright, that's it for initial thoughts, and now we are going to go listen to the albums, and then we'll be right back to give our thoughts on them. So stay tuned. Alright, we've gone and listed the albums now, and now we're going to discuss how we feel about them. Alright, we are going to be starting off with you, Matthew, and I want to hear your thoughts on Shake Your Money Maker by the Black Crows.
I thought it was all right. I thought it was a pleasant listen. I thought the songs were good. Um, I think it's best listened to when it is like all the way through, not just one song, because I didn't think to it's like songs stood out to me, but I thought it was an alright album.
Alright, Santiago, what were your thoughts on this album?
Well, since I didn't know anything about Black Crowes, so I wasn't expecting anything at all. And okay, so that then I noticed this album is from 90 from the 90s, right?
Yeah, I think it's like 1990, so it's like right on the decade.
Yeah. So when I saw the year, I was like a bit hesitant if I was gonna like it because I usually don't listen much music around that time. But once I listened to it, it really gave me like kind of 70s vibes. I don't know. Maybe it's just the normal sound around that time, I guess, but because I just don't know much about the music around that time, but it really felt like listening an album from like from the 70s, sorry, from the 70s or something like that, which I ended up like it. So yeah, I enjoy it. I wouldn't say I love the album, but it was solid overall. So yeah, that's my thought.
Alright, well, I'm gonna give my thoughts on the album now. I thought this album was boring as hell. Um, I was just listening to this, and it's just like it's every like I'll agree with Santiago. It sounds like it's from the '70s. I'll agree wholeheartedly. It sounds like somebody's just doing a Leonard Skinner imitation, maybe with a little tiny bit of Robert Plant in there. But it just sounds like it sounds kind of like the cheap plastic knockoff of like a '70s album. It's like if it's like the difference between like Lego and that fake Lego bootleg stuff they make. It's just like the inferior version of it. The
Yeah,
performances.
there wasn't a song that stood out.
There wasn't a song
Yeah,
that stood out. The whole performances just felt a bit thinner. The songwriting felt just very uninspired to me. It seemed to be it felt to me like they're like, oh, we like '70s music, we're gonna try to be like a '70s album, and then they made up a checklist of like cliches that were in '70s albums, and they were just going and trying to like tick each box off one by one.
Okay, I'm here, I guess. Wow, can we move quickly, please?
Yeah. Ben,
oh
how
my
did how
god.
did you feel about the Black Crows?
It was alright. I don't remember much about it, honestly. But it was kind of like a nice, like early '90s rock, I guess, what it is. Um, it was like it kind of felt middle of the road in some ways, though. You know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah, that's basically the only thought I have.
Yeah. Um, I just thought this album was boring and cliche and just kind of a cheap knockoff. That's all I thought personally. All right. Anyways, the next album was of course "Ride the Lightning" by Metallica, and we're gonna start with you, Ben. How did you feel about "Ride the Lightning" by Metallica?
It was a Metallica album. Um, I thought that it sounded a decent amount like Master of Puppets, which is the other Metallica album I've listened to. That I thought it was fine. I guess probably should re-listen to it at some point. Because I listened to it like pretty late at night. Uh, but I thought it was fine. I mean, I thought the song "Fight File with File," I thought Richard's opening track in particular was pretty good.
All right, Matthew. We're going on to you. How did you feel about this album?
I really enjoyed myself with this album. um, I think sonically, you could say, well, musically, probably the Black Rose album was better, but I just like the goofiness that is Ride the Lightning. It's just nonsensical. It's fun. It doesn't make any sense intellectually, but I really enjoy this album.
Um,
Metallica album, after Master of Puppets, I think also, I think it's very much known. I've said it that I prefer 80s Metallica over like their other stuff, but yeah, I really like this album. And shout out to Zach, one of the biggest Metallica fans I know.
Now, before we go to Santiago, I do want to counter something Matthew said. He said it wasn't like super academic or whatever, and that is true in a way. But I will say of the two albums we listened to here, I did think this was probably the more academic of the two. I mean, obviously, like for instance, For Whom the Bell Tolls is a literary reference, obviously.
Yeah, that's true.
And like suddenly, like I didn't like that's more than what the Black Crows had going on in terms of like academia. I'm pretty sure. So I wouldn't exactly call this like lowbrow.
It is what it is. It's a Metallica album. You're gonna have fun with it.
Yeah. Anyway, Santiago, how did you feel about Wide of the Lightning by Metallica?
Okay, so I never heard Metallica before I listened to this album, so yeah, I knew about their sound. Like, okay, it must be Metallica. I guess it's metal music. So I was like, okay, this may not be my thing because I never listened to metal music. So um, so when I started listening to songs, it was like I don't know if I will gonna I gonna go through this listening to metal music. At the end, like I was able to listen the whole album, and it was honestly quite different as I was picturing it myself in my head. Like I thought it was gonna be worse. Let's say, like I thought it was gonna be like heavy metal, but it wasn't like really heavy metal. It was just like a more soft metal, I would say. Um, I I I did enjoy it, to be honest, but I would say like I enjoy it in the same level I did with Black Crowes, but I gotta say that I prefer the energy this album gives off. Uh, so yeah, it has a lot of energy. This album. Uh, yeah, it was fine.
Alright, well, that's for my thoughts. I liked this album. Um, I think I was pretty strong on my thoughts on the previous album. I'm going to be a little bit less strong here, but I still intend to be pretty clear on what my thoughts were. I liked this album. I'm not a huge metal listener. I listen to some Black Sabbath and some Metallica, and that's it. I only listened to this album for the first time not that long before we did this episode. Um, and, so I was already I was already familiar with it here going into this episode, but only just kind of recently acquainted with it. But I had listened to Master of Puppets before. Zach got me to listen to Master of Puppets years back when he told me he would listen to Time by Electric Light Orchestra if I listened to Master of Puppets by Metallica. So most of my experience with Metallica's from Master of Puppets. Here we were listening to Ride of the Lightning. Ride of the Lightning I think is a pretty good album. It's also probably a pretty good album to get into the band on, I would guess. It certainly feels more
I would agree.
it feels more accessible to me than Master of Puppets. Um it's very good. I think the songwriting's good. I think the instrumentation's good. I'm not the biggest fan of the vocals on this album. That is though kind of secondary to the instrumentation though. So I can forgive it, and they all, at the very least, at the very worst, they're fitting. They're never like inappropriate, but I want it's kind of a one kind of spot where it's like a bit weak, or but I think as far as like metal goes, like this is like a pretty like prime cut of it, like because like you do have songs like from For Whom the Bell Tolls, you have Fade to Black, you have Trapped Under Ice, you have Creeping Death, Escape. That's another one I really liked. You have Fight Fire with Fire. Like, you know, these all kind of belong to, at least of the metal songs I've heard, kind of the higher tier of them, if not the highest. And as such, this is sort of a prime cut of the genre, heavy metal music. And as such, I think this was, yeah, actually a very good album. I quite enjoyed. So, um, yeah.
Also, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think also like for those people like heavy metal, like some people say, well, this is like the beginning of thrash. I guess that type of music. So that's like one thing. If there were music nerds that are like, well, technically this is thrash metal, or you know what? Let's not.
Well, whatever. To me, the overall genre name is called heavy metal, and there's some people who would like to nitpick, but I'm not. I'm not one of them. So
Me neither. I of the four of us, I do listen to heavy metal the most, like heavy metal, hard rock. I listen to this the most of the four of us currently.
well, moving on. Of course, now it's time for us to say which album we liked better. Ben, we'll start with you. Which of these two albums did you like better?
The Metallica one. I just, I don't know. I enjoyed listening to them all. Then the other one, because the other one was kind of generic.
All right. Well said, Ben. Um, all right, Matthew. Which album did you like better?
Ride the Lightning. Every time, yeah, Ride the Lightning is very obvious.
All right, Santiago. Which album did you like better?
At first, I thought that like I was asking myself when I heard these two albums right away. Like I was thinking, yeah, I prefer Black Crowes. I said myself, but now I feel like leaning towards Metallica. So I think I prefer Metallica over Black Crowes.
Let's
All right.
go.
All right. We're about to have a strangely precedented occurrence, one that I thought would never happen again, but we actually keep having them.
This is
Um,
the third time.
yeah, this is like the third time. I'm casting my vote, guys. What's it gonna be? What's it gonna be? I think you already know what it's gonna be.
Black Crowes.
No, no, no.
Kit Destroyer by Kiss.
No! No. I'm casting it for Wide for Lightning by Metallica.
You almost got me.
Just a straight up better album. The other album was boring. Metallica is not boring, and so, you know, Metallica's album was actually good. So, Metallica's album was good. The Black Crowes album was, in my opinion, boring, and Kiss's album, which hasn't really been discussed in this episode, but shout out to that previous episode we did. That album was bad. So, yeah.
I think I actually preferred. I have to think about it. I actually may prefer the Destroyer album than the Crow album, Black Crowes album. Maybe I don't remember.
Um, well, there's no accounting for taste.
Yeah. All right, let's get to who picked what.
Yeah, all right, yeah. Okay, next up is who picked what. Anyone want to guess which one of us picked this album?
I'm gonna say you picked the Metallica album. I do not know who picked the Black Crowes album.
All right, well, ready for the big reveal? Drum roll, please. Okay, both of these albums were picked by me. I picked the Black Crowes album because they were a band that I know, like, people talk about. Like I have name recognition of them. I didn't really have too much of a sound to the name. Or if it was one of those songs from the album I hear on the radio, I can never make out any of its lyrics. Um, but I'd kind of forgotten who it was by. So, but like, there's a lot of people I see like online, like on Twitter, who always like the Black Crowes, so amazing. The albums are like genius, and it's like, including this one. I listened to this, and I was like, whoa, no.
I
But
thought you were gonna say their albums are like Genesis.
no, not like Genesis, genius.
I
And
was like, oh, like Genesis,
I was
a
like,
band
no,
I like.
yeah, no, yeah, a band I like too. This album was nowhere near as good as any Genesis album that I've heard. I haven't listened to the Genesis album from the '90s, but every other Genesis album has, you know, at least something, you know, memorable on it, even if it's just one track, depending on which album it is. And this album, I just couldn't really find anything to kill about it at all on this Black Crowes album. I picked it because I heard the name. I know some people really like it. I was like, we should listen to this and see what we think. And, well, you know what conclusion I came to. As for Metallica, I picked Metallica because it's like, Metallica's Metallica. That'd be good to cover. And, you know, I generally like it. I knew more what I was in for with Metallica than I did for Black Crowes, obviously. So, I do think they made interesting conversation topics here in this video. I hope that everyone here has enjoyed watching this video. I hope we've had good, at least interesting things to say. I'm sure my take in this video will be very controversial, if anyone actually watches this video. And yeah,
Okay,
once again, if you watched to this end part, if you didn't just like rage quit the video when I started bashing the Black Crowes, then I wanna thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. I would encourage you to like this video and subscribe to my channel, as we do have a bunch of various kind of music, both classic rock, but also a bit newer music, kind of just overall here. And once again, thanks for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.